My name is Margaret Turner, but most people call me Maggie. I'm 56 years old, and for 7 years I've been officially a widow. 7 years. Funny how time folds. Sometimes it feels like just yesterday that I buried the love of my life, and other times it feels like it's been forever. Since I last heard his laugh echoing through the garage. My husband's name was Paul Turner. He was the kind of man who always had grease on his hands and a smile on his face. He'd been a mechanic since he was 18, but he used to say the thing that really made his heart race wasn't work, it was the Mustang project. The car he bought when we hadn't even finished paying off the house. Yes, the 1967 Ford Mustang Fastback, moss green, peeling paint, a tired engine but a soul. Paul used to say, "That car breathes, Maggie. It just needs someone to wake it up." When he died, I left the car under a blue tarp behind the garage. Every time I walked by, the wind would lift a corner of the cover and I'd catch the gleam of a headlight, like an eye still watching me. A constant reminder. I live in Asheville, North Carolina. Before I continue, I want to take a moment to thank Buried by Family for giving my story a voice. If you've been touched by what you've heard so far, please support this channel by subscribing, leaving a like, and sharing your thoughts in the comments below. Tell us where you're watching from. Every story connects us, no matter the distance. And now, let's continue. I live in Asheville, North Carolina. It's small enough that everybody knows each other's business, but big enough that I can get lost on the days when the longing hits hard. I have 2 sons, Ethan, the oldest, 31, and Ryan, the youngest, 27. They're what's left of Paul. Each of them carries something of him in their own way. Ethan inherited his ambition and stubborn streak. Ryan, his quiet heart and sensitivity. Paul always said the Mustang would be the boys' project. They'll learn from it. Maggie, they'll understand patience, dedication, and loving something that takes time to bloom. And for many years, that really was the heart of our family. On weekends, the garage turned into a little sanctuary. Ethan would bring a portable radio, Ryan would be in charge of sanding parts, and Paul with a beer in hand ran the whole thing like a maestro conducting an orchestra made of bolts, oil, and dreams. That's where we laughed, fought, and made peace without many words. The old engine trying to catch was, in a way, the sound of our togetherness. When Paul died sudden heart attack at 49, the house went quiet in a strange way. Not the normal quiet of night, the quiet of something interrupted. The boys were wrecked. Ethan, already married back then, tried to be practical. Ryan, still in college, locked himself in his room and didn't come out for 2 days. And the Mustang sat, incomplete, like us. For the first few months, I went out to the garage almost every morning. I'd pull back the tarp, wipe it down, check the engine even though I barely understand mechanics. It was a way to feel close to Paul. Some neighbors thought it was odd. They said I should sell the car and move on. But I never could. "That car is more than metal and bolts," I'd answer. "It's what's left of us." Time went by. Ethan moved to Charlotte, bought a big house, started rising fast in real estate. Ryan got his design degree and moved back in with me after a rough patch. I kept my simple routine. Job at the local market, strong coffee at 6 a.m., and daily visits to the Mustang. Every time I pulled off the cover and saw that rusted body, I heard Paul's voice. "Maggie, a car is like a marriage. You have to take care of it, even when it looks like it can't be fixed anymore." Ironic, I cared for that car the way I would have cared for us, and in silence, I kept hoping that one day my boys would come back to the garage, get their hands greasy, and say, "Let's finish this for him, Mom." But that day never came. Sometimes at night I'd pull out the old photo album. There was one picture in particular, Paul with the boys, all 3 kneeling beside the Mustang, big grins, smeared with oil. The perfect image of who we were. And I'd ask myself, when did we stop being that? People say grief passes. Lie. Grief doesn't pass, it changes. At first, it screams. Then it's a silence that eats you from the inside. But in the middle of that silence, the Mustang was always there, waiting. That particular day, the day I decided to talk about it, about MIT, was drizzling. I sat on the porch with a cup of coffee and looked out at the yard. The blue tarp trembled. And for the first time in a long time, I felt I needed to tell the story, not of the car, but of what it held. Because every piece of that Mustang was a memory, and some memories, even painful ones, need to be revisited. That's how it started. Or started again. I remember exactly the day Paul showed up with that car for the first time. It was 1996. The sun was blazing, and I was planting flowers out front when I heard the engine on ugly, choking sound, almost dying, but announcing something important. Paul got out of the pickup with a boyish grin. Behind it, on a trailer, there it was, the '67 Mustang Fastback. Look at this, Maggie. I found a treasure. I was covered in dirt and could only laugh. A treasure. Looks more like a pile of rust on wheels. He laughed big, the kind of laugh that fills your soul. You don't get it, babe. This car is history, and it's going to be the boys' project. Our family project. Back then, Ethan was only 4 and Ryan was a newborn. Paul already dreamed of the two of them learning engines, swapping parts, getting their hands greasy. And that's how it began. He spent months saving, buying parts little by little, researching every detail. I complained, sure, but deep down, I loved seeing him so passionate. The Mustang became a symbol of hope, something that made us look to the future with excitement. Every bolt we turned was a promise that we were building something together. I can still smell that garage, grease, coffee, and country music. Paul would put Johnny Cash on the radio and say, "This car's gonna sing again, Maggie, you'll see." The boys grew up in that world engine noise, laughter, plans. But life, as always, has a cruel way of testing our dreams. People say a garage is just a space. To me, it was the heart of our family, where other couples had a living room as their gathering place. We had that rectangle of oil-stained concrete. That's where life happened. I remember Saturday afternoons, Paul in his old Yankees shirt, Ethan standing on a stool to reach the hood, and Ryan running around with a tiny wrench in his hand like he was part of the crew. That was our little world. One day, this car's gonna roll down this street with all of us inside. Maggie, he'd say. It'll shine. And I want the boys to know we're the ones who brought it back to life. And I believed him. Not just because Paul kept his promises, but because I saw something in his eyes I can't explain. A calm fervor, a love for simple things done with soul. Years passed and, yes, the car stayed in pieces. But each piece told a chapter of our life. The steering wheel swapped out when Ethan turned 10. The reupholstered seat this summer Ryan broke his arm and insisted on helping anyway. The day Paul painted the hood and made me write our initials in white marker under the paint. Like this, Maggie, it'll be ours forever. Even if no one sees it. Sometimes I laugh alone remembering that, because he was right. Even after years, even under dust and rust, that car was still ours. But time is relentless. After Paul died, nothing sounded the same. The garage's echo turned hollow. The radio got dusty, and the tools, quiet. At first, the boys tried to keep up the ritual. For a few weeks, Ethan would show up on Sundays, fiddle with something, but he was always in a hurry talking about work, bills, plans. Ryan, more sensitive, said he couldn't stand the smell of oil. It reminded him too much of Dad. Little by little, the garage went silent. Stubborn as I am, I didn't let neglect take over. I washed the floor, organized the tools, turned on the radio. Even with nobody there, I kept the routine alive. It was my way of talking to Paul. "We're still here, babe," I'd murmur while wiping the Mustang's hood. "We're still trying." Some nights were harder. Rain on the roof reminded me of tires on the road. I'd close my eyes and hear the engine, his laughter, and when I opened them, only silence. Silence and the dull sheen of a car that waited like me to be awakened again. Once, Ethan came to visit, married for 2 years by then. He had that practical tone of someone who believes everything in life has a simple fix. He sat at the table and said, "Mom, you should sell that car. It's just a heap of scrap taking up space." My heart shrank. I looked at him, trying to understand how someone who grew up in that garage could say that. "It's not just a car, Ethan. It's a piece of your father." He sighed, impatient. "Dad's been gone 7 years. Mom, you need to move on." If only he knew. Moving on is easy for those whose hearts didn't stall in the same place. After he left, I went into the garage and sat on the cold floor. I cried softly, hands resting on the Mustang's hood. It wasn't just sadness. It was a mixture of anger, loneliness, and love. In that moment, I realized the car wasn't just a keepsake for me. It was the last physical link to the man who built our story. While the world outside changed, the boys growing up, neighbors aging, trends passing, the Mustang stayed the same. A stubborn symbol of everything Paul believed, that things are worth it when you care for them. One fall morning, I woke to the sound of Ryan knocking on the garage door. He'd moved back after a bad breakup. He looked worn out, lost like a boy again. Can I stay here a while, Mom? Of course, honey. This house has always been yours. In the days that followed, I saw something in him I hadn't seen in a long time. Calm. Maybe it was the air of the house. Maybe the garage's silence. Sometimes I'd catch him standing in front of the Mustang, just looking. You know, Mom, he said once, Dad was right. This car has a soul. I smiled. Maybe it was my first genuine smile in months. That's when I began to believe, again quietly, that there was still a chance to fix the car, to fix us. But fate had more turns ahead, and, as I'd learned later, not everyone was ready to honor the past the same way. Some mornings, I still expected to hear Paul's voice from the kitchen, complaining the coffee was too strong, or asking if I washed his favorite shirt, but of course, I heard nothing. What remained was the distant sound of the waking city, and the tick-tock of the wall clock, the same one he repaired. That's never stopped since. Life goes on, they say. What they don't understand is that sometimes, it goes on without you. You just watch. One afternoon after work, I went to the garage like always. Sunlight cut through the dirty window and spread a golden beam across the Mustang's hood. There was something poetic about it, the dust-covered car, the marks of time, and still, a stubborn shine. I sat on the old stool and watched. I ran my fingers over the cool metal and closed my eyes. For a moment, I swear I felt Paul's warm hand over mine. Don't give up, Maggie, he whispered in my memory. Anything made with love can be fixed. Without realizing it, I started talking to myself. Paul, if you can hear me, give me a sign, anything, just to know I'm not alone in this. The wind slipped through the window, lifting the blue tarp and revealing the left headlight, the one he always said looked like a winking eye. I smiled. Maybe it was coincidence, but deep down, I knew it was an answer. That night, I dreamed of him. We were both inside the Mustang, driving down the old road to the lake. The car was perfect, the engine purring, paint gleaming, the smell of new leather mixed with his cologne. He looked at me and said, "See, Maggie, I told you we'd get him running again." I woke up crying, but for the first time in a long time, it was a soft cry, longing that warms instead of tearing you apart. The next morning, I made coffee, took a deep breath, and decided it was time to change something. I didn't know what yet, but something inside me was begging for movement. The same movement that car hadn't had in years. That's when Ryan wandered into the kitchen, half asleep, hair a mess. "Mom, you okay?" "I am, honey, just thinking." "About what?" I looked out the window, straight at the garage, the Mustang, and your dad. He was quiet for a second, then gave me a crooked smile. "Dad loved that car." I nodded. "And I think, in some way, he's still there, waiting for us." Ryan frowned. "Waiting for us for what?" It took me a moment to answer, to finish what he started. Inside, a knot tightened. Saying it out loud was almost a commitment, and I knew keeping it would mean revisiting memories, opening wounds, but maybe healing them too. Looking at Ryan, I saw a reflection of Paul when he was young. The same curious gaze, the same way of leaning on his elbows at the table, and I realized there was still time. Time to rebuild something, even if it was from the rubble. Later, while I was gathering laundry in the yard, I saw Ethan pull up. The sound of his car always pricked at me, modern, quiet, almost arrogant. He stepped out, adjusting his blazer, face tired. "Hey Mom." "Hi honey, what a nice surprise." Was driving by. Thought I'd stop in. We chatted about nothing, his job, the new house, his wife, investment plans, but I noticed how he avoided looking toward the garage, as if that space carried a weight he'd rather ignore. When he said goodbye, he tossed out a casual comment that kept knocking around my head. "One day you should let that car go." "Mom, it's already served its purpose. Let it go, like it was simple, like it was just a car." I stood there watching him get in his new car and drive off, and as the sound of his engine faded down the street, I made myself a promise. No, I'm not letting it go, because the Mustang wasn't the past. It was the only future that still made sense. That night, I went to the garage with a flashlight. I opened the hood, not really knowing what to look for. The tools were exactly where Paul left them. When I picked up a wrench with a worn handle, I felt a kind of current, something alive, pulsing between the metal and my hands. "Let's try, Paul," I whispered. Our way. Outside, the rain started to fall thin, almost a whisper, and for the first time since he left, I felt peace. Not because the pain was gone, but because I'd finally found a purpose for it. The Mustang's heap of metal, grease, and memory would be the starting point, not just to restore a car but to restore us. And I had no idea, that night, how much that decision would change everything. Because what began as an act of love would become, months later, a story of betrayal, loss, and justice. But that belongs to another chapter. I remember the sound before I saw the car. A hoarse, uneven rumble, like an old animal trying to breathe. It was a spring Saturday in 1996, and I was hanging laundry when I heard that noise from the end of the street. For a second, I thought it was a broken-down truck. But when I looked, I saw Paul driving a borrowed pickup, a trailer swaying behind it. And on the trailer, a car that looked more like a metal ghost than anything else. He parked out front, climbed down with that boyish grin that always undid me, and shouted, "Maggie, come see what I got." I dropped the clothes right there and went to the gate. Up close, the smell of rust and gasoline made me wrinkle my nose. "What is this, Paul Turner?" "This, my dear, is a 1967 Ford Mustang Fastback, a legend on wheels." I looked at him, then at the car. The hood was dented, paint peeling, interior torn, true ruin. A legend. Looks more like a lost cause. "Exactly," he said, thrilled. "That's what makes it special. We're going to bring it back to life, together." Paul always had this thing for seeing beauty in what others called lost. When we bought our house old cheap, full of leaks, he said the same thing. It just needs care. And someone who believes in it. And he was right, in the end. He turned that place into a home. Now, standing in front of the Mustang, I saw the same light in his eyes. "You know how much I paid?" he asked, ready to brag. "I hope not much, considering the state of it. $700, worth every penny." I shook my head, incredulous. "Paul, we're still paying off the new stove." "Oh, Maggie, relax. This car will be the family project. What we leave for the boys." I glanced inside the house. Ethan, just 4, played on the floor with toy cars. Ryan slept in the crib. And in that moment, something in me gave way. Maybe it was Paul's tone, or the way he looked at the car, not like someone who'd bought a pile of scrap, but like someone who'd brought home a dream. I sighed. "Fine, Paul, but it doesn't go in the garage until you promise to keep the yard clean." "Deal," he said, sticking out his hand like a kid. "Now help me push this beauty." That was the first of many afternoons around the Mustang. Ethan was fascinated. I remember him climbing into the driver's seat, his feet not even reaching the pedals, pretending to drive. "Look, Daddy, I'm flooring it. That's it, champ." Paul laughed. "One day it'll be you for real at that wheel." It was beautiful watching them together. Paul had a gift for turning everything into a lesson without trying. As he dismantled the dash, he explained to Ethan what each part was. "See this, son? This is the car's heart. If it stops beating, nothing else works." I'd lean against the doorframe and watch. Back then, life seemed simple. Work, laughter, and that unfinished car that somehow made us feel complete. Weeks became months, and the Mustang became part of our routine. Paul got up early, had coffee, and went straight to the garage. Ethan followed, always curious. Even little Ryan, when he started walking, dragged tools across the floor, copying his dad. It was a delicious chaos, clinking metal, the smell of oil, the radio playing 70s hits. That garage became the stage for our story. One day, while I was washing dishes, I heard Paul call me. "Maggie, come here a second." I found him with a rag in hand, sweaty, covered in grease, smiling like a kid who'd won a prize. "What is it now?" The engine fired, and it did. The rumble filled the air. It was uneven, rough, but alive. And for a moment, the four of us, Paul, me, Ethan, and little Ryan, stood there surrounded by a sound that felt bigger than us. "Do you hear that?" he shouted over the noise. "I do. The neighbor does too," I yelled back, laughing. He turned it off and pulled me close. "One day, Maggie, this car will take us to the lake, all four of us. I promise." He meant it. And as always, I believed him. But promises are fragile, and time is merciless. Back then, I didn't know the sound of that engine would one day be the most vivid memory I had left of him. After that first roar, the Mustang became almost a member of the family. It felt like it had an Emma spirit of its own. Paul called it Buddy. "Come on, Buddy, wake up," he'd say every morning, opening the hood like greeting an old friend. Ethan echoed, "Come on, Buddy, you can do it." And me, I just watched, between pots and dish towels, I'd watch my boys and my husband dive into that world of oil and rust with a devotion that felt almost holy. The garage was never quiet again. The radio was always on CCR, Fleetwood Mac, sometimes Johnny Cash. Paul tapped tools to the rhythm. Ethan joined with a makeshift drum. Ryan, too little to understand, danced clumsily in the corner. Their laughter mixed with the clank of wrenches and the occasional engine test. It was a handmade happiness, stitched from noise and love. I always say the garage was the heart of our home, but the Mustang was the soul. Paul had a rare talent for turning everything into a lesson. Adjusting the carburetor, he taught Ethan patience. If you rush it, the engine chokes. Everything in life is like that, son. When Ryan asked why the paint took so long to dry, he answered, because what's made to last takes time. Quick things fade. Sometimes at night, after the boys were asleep, he'd call me to the garage. Come see, Maggie. Sit here. We'd sit inside the car, still missing seats, staring at the empty dash, imagining how it would look when it was finished. One day we'll hit the road, just the four of us, he'd say. And where are we going? Anywhere, as long as we're together. That garage saw everything. First steps, first swear words, lectures, cries of frustration, and the laughter that fixed it all. When Ethan turned 10, Paul let him turn the key for the first time. The boy shook with excitement. Okay, kiddo, turn it slowly, just to feel the power. The engine coughed, then caught. Ethan jumped on the seat. Dad, it worked. I made it work. You and Buddy did it together. Ethan beamed in a way only a proud child can. For a moment, he wasn't just a kid, he was part of it. Part of something bigger. The following years were a string of good, messy memories. Every summer Paul promised now it's happening, that this would be the year the car was done. But something was always missing. An expensive part, free time, or just the courage to close such a beautiful chapter. Even so, the Mustang stayed at the center of everything. Christmas, birthdays, even Thanksgiving ended with someone asking to see how the car's doing. Everyone would head to the garage, dressed up, peeking under the hood, listening to Paul detail the progress. Now it's just the wiring. After that, paint, and we'll put it on the road. And me, pragmatic as ever. You've been saying that for 3 years. Paul, 3 years of learning, love. He'd wink, and I'd laugh. It was impossible to stay mad when he talked about the Mustang. What impressed me most was how he used the car to teach values. It wasn't just about engines, it was about life. Once Ethan and Ryan had a bad fight. The younger one, only 8, shoved his brother and broke a tool. Paul didn't yell. He took them to the car and pointed to a damaged piece. See this? One hit, and now it doesn't fit right. Even if we fix it, it won't be exactly the same. That's what happens when we hurt someone. The boys went quiet. Ethan cried. Ryan apologized. Paul hugged them both and said, the good thing is, Buddy teaches forgiveness, too. We can fix it just takes willingness. I watched from the kitchen door. Paul, kneeling beside the boys, dirty, sweaty, but with that light in his eyes. He was a man who loved deeply, not with words, but with gestures, with patience, with work, with presence. That car was a reflection of that. An unfinished project, maybe, but full of purpose. Sometimes alone at night, I'd think maybe the Mustang was a kind of metaphor for our marriage, full of patches, imperfect, sometimes jammed, but always running again because we never gave up. And I was grateful for that. For that man, for that car, for a life that looked simple but was the kind anyone would call true happiness. If I'd known what was coming, maybe I would have asked Paul to finish the Mustang faster. To make sure the last chapter of our story happened together, inside it, on the road. But life, as he always said, doesn't wait for us to be ready. Back then, I still believed we had all the time in the world. Time passed, as it always does, slow enough to think nothing's changing, fast enough to realize everything has. The Mustang was still there, stubbornly taking up half the garage and a whole space in Paul's heart. But things started to shift. Ethan hit his teens friends' sports parties. Suddenly the garage wasn't the meeting point. Ryan, always closer to his dad, tried to keep the habit, but even he drifted bit by bit. Paul didn't complain, at least not out loud, but I saw it. The way he'd look at the car sitting there, rags slung over his shoulder, waiting for someone to show up and help, and nobody came. They grow up, Paul, I'd say. It's normal, I know. I just wanted a little more time. Still, he didn't give up. Saturdays he'd put on the radio, open the hood, and work alone. The sound of tools echoed through the house, a comforting reminder in its own way. Paul was still there, fixing, caring, believing. Sometimes Ryan would pop in and ask, "Need help, Dad?" Paul would smile, pretending to be surprised. "I thought you'd forgotten where the garage is." "Never forget. Just don't want to get in the way." "You never get in the way, son. Never." In those moments, I saw a light in Paul's eyes, a mix of pride and fear. Pride for the boys they were becoming. Fear that time would carry them too far away. When Ethan turned 18 and got into college, Paul wanted to celebrate. "Let's go for a drive. Just the two of us," he said. "In the Mustang." Not yet, but soon. They took the old family car. When they came back, Paul was different, quiet. That night he told me, "You know what Ethan said? That he doesn't have time to waste on an old car anymore." He tried to laugh, but his voice cracked. He said he wants to focus on the future, that the Mustang is just a reminder of the past. I touched his face gently. "You knew this day would come." "I did. I just didn't think it would hurt this much." After that, Paul worked less on the car. Not because he gave up, he wasn't the quitting kind, but because the garage had lost some of its color. Still, every Friday night he'd go out there, wipe it down, tidy the tools, and tell me, "When we've got grandkids, they'll ride in this car, even if it takes me 20 more years to finish." I smiled, even as my heart tightened. There was one thing I admired most about Paul, his faith in his promises. Time, however, has no mercy. When he turned 49, his body began to complain. Nothing major: back pain, high blood pressure, and day fatigue. I begged him to get checked, but he'd hide behind humor. "I'm tough as nails, Maggie. There are things even God looks at and says, better not touch it, he'll fix himself." But his body wasn't fixing itself anymore. What came next hit like lightning. It was a Sunday morning. The sun was bright, and Paul was already in the garage before I woke up. Ryan, who'd come to visit, went to call him for breakfast. Silence. The clink of tools had stopped. When I got there, Ryan stood frozen, pale. Paul was on the floor beside the Mustang, hand still on the hood as if he were trying to push himself up. The world stopped right then. No screams, no immediate panic, just the radio playing a low Johnny Cash song, and the body of the man I loved, still, covered in grease and light. The hospital confirmed what my heart already knew: a massive heart attack, too fast, too cruel. I remember the smell of the shop still on his hands the last time I saw him, and I thought, almost like a prayer, he died in the only place he was entirely happy, but his happiness left a hole inside us, inside me. After the funeral, the boys stayed a few days. Ryan barely slept. Ethan tried to keep busy: papers, bills, bureaucracy, as if control over practical things could be an antidote to pain. All I could do was stare at the garage, the blue tarp over the Mustang, the cleaning rag folded on the seat, and the silence of the radio, the kind of silence that screams. That week, I wrote a letter. Not for anyone else to read, for myself. I tucked it into the glove box. "Paul, I promise I won't let Buddy die. Even if it takes time, even if it hurts, I'll care for him the way you cared for us, and when he's back on the road, I'll believe it's you at the wheel." I folded the letter, closed the lid, and covered the car. It was my way of saying goodbye, of promising not to give up. The days after Paul's death were a blur. I remember the rain on the day of the burial, the smell of wilting flowers, the empty stare of my sons. More than anything, I remember the silence that took the house, a heavy silence, like even the walls knew something essential was gone. The garage, once alive and noisy, became a mausoleum. Each tool was an echo, each oil stain, a scar. For weeks, I couldn't go in. I'd pass the door and feel the air thick with his presence. It was as if Paul's spirit still hovered there, waiting for the next weekend to keep working. Until one day, moved by something I can't explain, I opened the door. Morning light slid through the grimy glass and lit suspended dust. The blue tarp covered the Mustang, but the outline was still clear as if a sleeping body. I took one step, then another. The floor creaked under my shoes. I grabbed the cleaning rag on the seat, the same one he used, and caught the smell of grease mixed with his cheap Sunday cologne. I sat on the cold floor and cried. Not the desperate crying of the funeral day. This was calmer, drained, almost silent, like every tear washed away a little of the weight I carried. "You left it unfinished, Paul," I whispered. "But maybe that's how it is. Maybe life itself is a car we never quite finish building." From that day on, I started going in every morning. My ritual, I'd sweep the floor, dust the tools, check the engine, not really knowing what I was doing, but doing it anyway. Some neighbors would see me and ask, "Are you still messing with that car, Maggie?" I don't know, maybe someday. But the truth was, I already was, not with my hands, with my heart. Taking care of that Mustang was how I kept Paul close, how I talked to him, how I remembered that something of his still existed in the world, something that depended on me not to be lost. The boys, each in their way, tried to move on. Ethan threw himself into work, climbed the ladder fast, got married. Ryan finished college, but always seemed a bit unmoored, caught between the past and whatever came next. Sometimes I'd catch them glancing at the garage, sideways, but they never went in. It was like the car was a ghost, a memory that hurt too much to face. I didn't blame them. We all grieve in our own way. And I chose to grieve by staying. On Paul's birthdays, I'd buy a candle and set it on the Mustang's hood. I'd stand in silence for a few minutes, watching the flame flicker on the rusty metal. Simple, but enough to feel he was there with me. Once, Ryan found me doing that and asked, "Don't you get tired, Mom?" Of what? Trying to keep everything the same, as if Dad were coming back. I looked at him calmly. "It's not about him coming back, honey. It's about not letting what he loved die with him." Ryan dropped his eyes. He didn't answer, but that night, he left a letter on the table. It said only, "When I'm ready, I want to help." I put his letter in the glove box, next to mine. As if, little by little, the car was gathering our family's pieces again. Even so, time marched on. Months turned to years. Dust settled again. There were days I thought about selling it. Others when I almost asked the mechanic to finish the job. But whenever I got close to deciding, something inside me said, "Not yet." So I'd wait. As if the Mustang itself, stubborn, silent, was waiting too, waiting for something, or someone. It was only much later years when fate moved again. Ryan had moved back home. Ethan was buying another house. That's when the Mustang began, without my noticing, to change places. Literally. But back then, I still believed it was just a car, and that my sons knew how much it meant to me. I had no idea the real test for our family was still coming, and that when the Mustang left that garage, it would take with it the last untouched part of our story. They say time heals everything, but anyone who's lost someone knows time doesn't heal. It teaches you to live with the whole. 7 years had passed since Paul left, and still, every morning when I woke and the sun slid into the kitchen, my first sight was the garage reflected in the window. The same garage, the same car, the same emptiness. The 1967 fastback Paul's buddy was still there, motionless, silent, but somehow alive. I never let anyone touch it. From time to time, I'd dust it, check the engine, change the oil, even without knowing exactly what I was doing. A ritual, my way of talking to the past. Sometimes I even heard his voice. "Careful with that filter, Maggie, it's delicate. Don't tighten that bolt too much. Love, let it breathe." And I'd whisper back, "I'm doing it the way you taught me." Over time, the car became a kind of altar. Neighbors thought it was odd. "Sure, why keep a car that hasn't run in almost a decade?" they'd ask. I'd smile and change the subject. "How do you explain that?" For me, that car was the last link keeping me whole. Every stain on the body, every crack in the seat, every piece held a bit of our life. It was like a diary made of metal. The cracked dash reminded me of when Ethan spilled soda. The left headlight, the one Paul said blinked at me, brought back the night he proposed in a borrowed car. That's what the Mustang was, our memories condensed into steel and rust. But over the years, something in me began to shift. The car wasn't just a memory anymore. It was a weight, because every time I saw it, I remembered not only Paul but what we never finished, his project, his dream, our family plan. The hardest part was my son's indifference. Ryan, the younger, would still help me wash it sometimes. He said he wanted to learn more about engines, but it rarely moved beyond words. Ethan always said I should sell. "Mom, it's just an old car. For you, maybe. Dad wouldn't want to see you stuck in this. Dad wouldn't want me to give up." We had that conversation so often it turned into a bitter refrain. Sometimes I wondered if I was wrong, if it made sense to hold on to something that, practically speaking, only collected dust. But all it took was touching the steering wheel to know the answer. That car gave me purpose. While the world spun, while Ethan built his perfect life and Ryan still tried to find his, the Mustang kept me rooted. I might not have Paul anymore, but I had something he loved, and that was enough to keep going. One afternoon, Ryan came into the kitchen with an envelope. "What's this?" "Old photos. Found them in the basement." We spread them on the table. There was Paul, covered in grease, laughing. The boys, little and dirty, holding tools, and the Mustang, hood off in the background. A lump rose in my throat. "You remember this day?" I asked. "I do. It was when Dad got the engine to run for the first time. He was so happy." "Yeah, and I didn't realize how important it was to him." Ryan's eyes had a sad shine. "You know, Mom, sometimes I think Dad didn't completely leave. I think he's still there. In that car." I smiled, unable to answer. Because he was right. Paul was still there. And somehow, we were still stuck there with him. That night, after Ryan went to bed, I went out to the garage. Moonlight edged in through the cracks, sketching shadows across the tarp. I knelt in front of the car and whispered, "Paul, I've kept everything how you left it. The keys, the parts, the radio. But the boys, they changed. I changed." The answer was silence, a deep silence that somehow held me. Then I realized something. That car, parked for so many years, wasn't just a reflection of Paul's death. It was a reflection of how I'd stopped with him, and maybe, to move forward, I needed to let it breathe again. But how? How do you touch something that holds so much of what's gone? Something in me started to move that night, subtle like when the wind stirs a curtain, and you only notice after it sways. I visited the garage more often. Not just to clean or fuss, but to be there. Sometimes I sat in the driver's seat, closed my eyes, and imagined the sound of the engine, the smell of gas, Paul's laugh mingling with the boys. But this time, it wasn't just nostalgia. For the first time in years, I felt something else, a want. I wanted to make the car run again, to finish what he started, to prove love doesn't end, just changes shape. I told Ryan first. He was on the porch, scrolling his phone, face distracted. "Ryan, can I ask you something?" "Sure, Mom." "Do you think it would be crazy to try finishing the Mustang?" He frowned, thinking, crazy? No, but hard, for sure. The car's been sitting for years. Mom, it had cost a fortune. I'm not talking about money, honey. I'm talking about meaning. He gave me that look that says he understands but doesn't want to jump in. "If that's what you need to feel okay, I'll help. But I don't know if Ethan will be on board." I sighed. "I know, but he needs to understand this car isn't just metal." A few days later, Ethan came by again. Always in a suit, always with his phone in hand. He looked like he'd aged more than I had, not on the outside, but inside. We sat at the table and, after a few minutes of small talk, I said it. "I've been thinking about sending the Mustang to a shop." He laughed without hiding it. "Mom, don't start." "Why not? The car can still be restored." "For what? To sit there again. Dad's gone." "Mom, you can't live clinging to a car. It's not the car, Ethan. It's what it stands for." "And what is that, exactly?" "Because to me, it's bills, rust, and memories you should leave behind." His words cut like a blade. "You talk about your father like he was a problem. Ethan, I'm talking like someone who learned to move forward. Something you still haven't done." Silence fell heavy. He checked his watch, like he always did when he wanted to end a conversation. "Mom, I just want you to live your life. Selling that car would be a good start. And I want you to remember where you came from." He stood, impatient. "Dad taught me to look ahead, not back." "Then maybe you forgot the most important lesson. Never abandon what you love." He froze for a second, eyes glassy, but said nothing. He grabbed his keys and left. As his car disappeared down the street, silence was my only company again. That night I sat in the garage, surrounded by shadows. I thought about everything he said. Was I really stuck in the past? But when I touched the Mustang's wheel, something drove out all doubt. A warmth, a familiarity, almost like the car was breathing. "No, Paul," I murmured. "I'm not stuck. I'm keeping alive what still makes sense." And I made a decision. Maybe I didn't know how, or with whom, or when, but I would restore that car, even if I had to do it alone. In the days that followed, I started small. Cleaned the engine, bought new oil, organized the tools. Ryan showed up sometimes to help, though I could tell he did it more to keep me company than out of real interest. Even so, I loved having him there. We didn't say much, but there was comfort in it. Two mended hearts trying to fix something that stood for everything they'd lost. One night, as we put the tools away, Ryan said, "You know, Mom, I think Dad would be proud of you." "You think so?" "I do. He always said the car was about family. In a way, you're keeping that alive." I smiled. Sometimes I think it's the car keeping me alive. For a while, it felt like things were settling into a new balance. Until, on a Sunday dinner, Ethan showed up again and, this time, he didn't come alone. His wife, Claire, was with him. Beautiful, elegant, with a practiced smile. "Mom, we brought wine." "Thank you, honey. Sit down, Ryan's almost here." Over dinner, Ethan said casually, about the Mustang. "I was thinking it might be good to move it out of here. Give you more space." I froze. "What do you mean, move it?" "We could store it at my place. I've got an extra garage. It'd be protected." Claire smiled, polite and empty. "That would be great, Maggie. We'd take good care of it, I promise." Something about her tone was wrong. Pretty words, hollow inside. "I'll think about it," I said flatly. But inside, a chill ran through me. Because suddenly, the Mustang didn't feel safe anymore. I had no idea that simple dinner would be the first step toward the biggest betrayal of my life. In the days after, I couldn't shake the idea. Moving the Mustang to Ethan's house. It sounded simple, practical, but it bothered me in a way I couldn't explain. I spent sleepless nights thinking. Part of me knew the car was always safest with me, under the same roof where it and Paul were born as an idea. But another part, the tired part, thought maybe it was time to share the weight. Maybe Ethan was right. Maybe I should learn to let go. The next morning, Ryan found me in the kitchen, staring into my coffee. "You okay, Mom?" "I'm thinking about what your brother said, about taking the Mustang to his place. And you're going to let him." I sighed. "He's got more space. He said he'll take good care of it." "You believe that?" I looked at Ryan, the sensitive one, the one who always saw what others wouldn't say. "I want to." A week later, Ethan showed up with a truck and two friends. Claire stood off to the side in sunglasses, phone in hand. The sun was hot. I stood on the porch watching them move. The winch's engine wailed like a lament. The sound of scraping metal cut through me like a living memory. "Careful with the hood," I said, panicked. "Relax, Mom. They know what they're doing." But the way he spoke, the chill in his voice, it bothered me. It was like the car was just another box being moved. Like decades of history weren't sitting right there. When the Mustang rose onto the trailer, my heart cinched tight. Sunlight flashed off the body, and for a second, I swear I saw Paul's face there, the same proud smile from the day he brought the car home the first time. "It'll be okay, Maggie," I imagined him saying. "It's just a temporary change." But inside, something shouted, "Don't let it go." Ethan came over, wiping his hands. "I'll put it in the detached garage, Mom. It'll be protected, and if I have time, I'll start working on it with Ryan. Do you promise?" "Of course I promise." He gave me a quick, cold hug and got in the car. The trailer started to move. I stood at the gate, watching as the Mustang disappeared around the corner. The sound of the tires on the asphalt dragged through me. When the noise was gone, I realized I was crying. "There goes the last piece of you, Paul." In the days after, the house felt different. Empty. The garage echoed, like even the air had left with the car. What once smelled of grease and memory now smelled like nothing. I tried to convince myself I'd done the right thing, that Ethan would keep his promise, that Ryan would help, that the car would be back soon. But under it all, something was wrong. A small, insistent discomfort, like a splinter in the heart. Months went by. Ethan sent short messages. "Car's good, Mom. Covered. I'll send a photo later." But the photos never came. And trying not to be the smothering mother, I didn't push. Until one day, Ryan asked, "Has Ethan started working on the Mustang?" "I don't think so, but he says he's taking care of it." Funny, he never mentions it to me. That planted a seed of doubt, one of those that grows fast, like weeds. On a rainy Sunday, I sat on the porch, looking at the empty yard where the car used to be. The rain on the ground sounded like the day Paul died. Everything seemed to repeat the same cycle. Presence, loss, emptiness. "You did the right thing, Maggie," I murmured. "Trust is love, too." But when I closed my eyes, I swear I heard a voice in my head, firm, gentle, familiar. "Be careful who you trust, to care for what you love." In the months that followed, routine went on. Ryan got a new job. Ethan bought a new car, and I kept trying to fill the silence. But each morning, when I looked at the empty garage, It felt like part of me had been hauled away with the Mustang, and somehow, I knew, without proof, without reason, that the car wouldn't come back the same. And that's how the season of hope ended. No fanfare, no farewell. Just an open gate, an empty space, and a painful hunch. But fate has a cruel way of revealing truth, and what I'd discover months later wouldn't just be a material loss, it would be the worst kind of betrayal. It was early spring when Ethan called. His voice sounded upbeat, rehearsed, like he wanted to sound casual, but I know my sons, and I know when they're trying to sell me something. Mom, guess what? The house is finished. I smiled into the phone. Really? That's wonderful, honey. You two worked so hard. Yeah, and I want you to come see it. Next Sunday. Claire's excited to show you everything. His tone was warm to be natural, but I agreed anyway. Part of me wanted to believe this visit would bring us closer. Another part just wanted to see the Mustang. Sunday dawned, beautiful blue sky, a light breeze. I wore a simple dress, tied my hair back, and brought an apple pie. Exactly the kind of gesture Paul would have approved of. Never visit empty-handed. Ethan's house was on a new street in a neighborhood where people park expensive cars and smiled to hide the exhaustion. When I stopped outside, I felt a mix of pride and strangeness. It was gorgeous, modern, with manicured lawn and a white fence that looked like it belonged in a magazine. But there was nothing of us there. No clutter, no signs of life. Claire opened the door, impeccable, catalog smile. Maggie, so glad you came. She hugged me quickly, without warmth. Her perfume was overly sweet, the kind that tries to cover something. The house is beautiful, Claire, thank you. Ethan worked so hard. Come on, I'll show you everything. We walked through the rooms, and with each step the weight of silence grew. Everything was too perfect. No marks, no stories, new furniture, new smells, fake smiles. The kitchen has an island, the floors are Italian marble, she said, spinning like a real estate show host, and Ethan has the office of his dreams, with a garden view. I nodded, polite, but what I really wanted to see wasn't any of that. And the garage? I asked, trying to sound casual. She hesitated a beat, too long, but I noticed, oh yes, there are 3, actually. 2 attached and 1 detached, by the side gate, and the Mustang is there, right? Her smile faltered for just a second. Yes, of course. Ethan stored it properly. But her eyes wavered. Ethan came down the stairs, smiling. Mom. Finally. He hugged me, and for a second, the gesture disarmed me. He was still my boy, just dressed like a man who carries the world in his pocket and forgot where he started. It's all amazing, honey. I'm so proud. You have to see the detached garage. I put the Mustang there, covered up. Promise it's safe. I want to see it. The quick glance he shared with Claire set off an alarm in me, but he recovered fast. Sure, after lunch. Over lunch, they talked about remodels, investments, trips, topics for people who live in a polished world and forget the grease under their nails. Ryan wasn't there, said he couldn't make it. I missed him. When Ryan's around, the air feels lighter. With Ethan and Claire, everything is rigid, rehearsed. While they talked, my eyes drifted to the window. Across the yard, I saw the detached garage white door locked, isolated from the house. No sign of use. For a moment, I swear I saw something, a corner of blue tarp under the gap. My heart sped. The Mustang. But when I blinked, it was gone. So, Mom, Ethan asked, cutting into my daydream. What do you think of the house? Beautiful, honey. Perfect. He looked pleased. But something in his smile bothered me, cold, distant. And the garage. Ethan, I still want to see it. Of course. I just need to get the key. After coffee. But after coffee turned into after dessert, and after dessert turned into, it's getting dark. Better another day. So I left without seeing the Mustang. On the drive home, the sky darkened. The radio was low, and I felt the same emptiness I'd felt when Paul passed. A familiar, nagging premonition whispered at the base of my soul, something's wrong. But I wanted to believe, to convince myself the car was there, stored, safe, that Ethan would keep his promise. You're seeing problems that aren't there, Maggie, I muttered to myself. He's your son. He wouldn't do that. But the wind through the window blew cold and sharp, and Paul's voice echoed inside me. Love without respect turns into neglect, Maggie, and neglect turns into loss. I went back to Ethan's 3 Sundays later, brought cookies, as if sugar could sweeten the bitterness I'd been carrying since that first visit. Claire opened the door with the hurry of someone receiving a delivery, not a person. Maggie, what a surprise. I brought cookies. Thought I'd see you too. And the Mustang. She hesitated for a second. Oh, sure. Ethan just ran to the store. He has the garage key. He keeps the key. Yeah, for security. The new alarm is always on. You know how these detached areas are. The neighborhood's great, but you never know. I smiled politely, but something scratched at me inside. At our house, the garage was always shelter, not risk. Here, it felt like guarded territory. Can we at least walk over? Just to see from outside. Of course, she said, grabbing her expensive magazine coat, but it's windy. We crossed the immaculate yard. The detached garage stood there like a white block, isolated, a clean scar on a perfect lawn. Claire sped up. I slowed, listening. Wind, leaves rustling, and nothing. No dense quiet of a car at rest. Smell, rust, old oil, damp tarp. Nothing. Everything smelled new. And the Mustang? I asked, hand on the door. Still under the blue tarp, unhung. She smiled. Ethan changed it. Actually, put a gray cover. More neutral. My chest tightened. Gray cover. I knew that blue tarp the way you know your child's blanket. It was the last skin of our past. Claire opened her arms in a helpless gesture. He said yours was worn out. And you saw the car under the cover? I asked, feigning innocence. She blinked too fast. I did. Of course, the door didn't open. There was no key, no smell. But she had seen it. I pocketed that detail the way you pocket a screw that looks ordinary but might hold the bumper on. The next week, I called Ethan. Son, I'd like to stop by Saturday. Can we see the Mustang? Saturday? Tough. The plumber's coming. Sunday? Then we'll be traveling. He breathed into the phone like someone scrambling for an exit ramp. Mom, I promise I'll send a picture today. You'll see it's beautiful there. Covered. Send it. I waited. No photo that day, nor the next. I went back a month later. Postcard sky. Sunny day. Ethan met me at the gate with a lukewarm hug. Hi, Mom. Hi, honey. Today, I want to see the garage. He shot a quick look at Claire, who appeared like a pretty shadow, already with the same old line. The key. I brought a pie. I cut in. But I'm not leaving without seeing the car. Ethan forced a smile, pulled a keyring from his pocket. The keys jingled like little alarm bells. Let's go then, he said, and the words sounded expensive. We crossed the yard. I counted the steps because I couldn't count my heartbeats. At the door, he put the key in, turned it, and stopped. Turned again. Nothing. Ah, he cleared his throat. They changed the lock cylinder last week. New system. Haven't gotten the copy yet. Who changed it? The security company. Protocol. Claire chimed in quickly. It was a package. Maggie. We didn't even ask. Got it? I said, my voice thin but steady. Ethan pocketed the keys. Mom, trust me. The car's there. We just can't open it now. The wind cut through me, cold for the first time from the inside. That white door was a wall between me and Paul. That month, small things started to add up. At Claire's birthday dinner, I heard a sentence heavier than candles on a cake. The extra space you have here is a luxury, a friend said. The detached garage saves our lives. Claire laughed. We use it for everything: storage, events, even rehearsal space for the reno people. I stopped cutting my steak. What do you mean, events? Small ones, she corrected. Like storing chairs, a sound system, that kind of thing. And the Mustang in the middle of that? I asked, with a sweet knife's edge. Oh, she rolled her eyes toward Ethan for coordinates. It's covered. Covered was her word when she had no detail to offer. One morning, I got a call. Unknown number. Mrs. Turner. This is Pete. I work on fences in your son's neighborhood. Yes, sorry to bother you. I found this note with your number on the community board. I think someone wrote it down wrong. It's nothing big. They left a service order under your name for the cleaning of the detached garage. In my name, yes, but the address is your son's, and I'm just the fence guy. But I thought I should check when I saw your name tied to something that's not your house. I thanked him, voice tight. Cleaning the detached garage. Why would my name be on a cleaning service for a space that, according to them, was barely opened? I called Ethan. Son, someone used my name for a service at your house. Must be a mistake. So, it was a mistake. When Claire said they hold small events in the garage, Mom, you're exaggerating. Exaggerating is the favorite fire extinguisher of those who strike matches in the dark. I want to see the car, I repeated. When I can, I'll call you, he said and hung up before I could say when I can is now. I started driving through their neighborhood like someone chasing wind. I parked on a side street, walked like a distracted neighbor past dogs in scarves and couples with travel mugs. It felt like another country. I stopped by Ethan's side gate. You could see the detached garage from there. Careful, I approached the service door. Locked. I pressed my face to the slats. Silence. That empty silence. No smell, no dust, no history. I remembered our old hallway back home. Even when the Mustang slept, it had a scent. Steel aging, tarp breathing, oil learning to be memory. There. Nothing. Can I help you? A tall man in a local team cap looked over the fence next door. I'm Ethan's mom. Just checking how things are. Oh, it's you. You're the one with that old car, right? My heart jumped. Yes, he scratched his neck. Saw a tow truck here. A few months back. Thought, a tow truck. My voice pitched higher than I wanted. When I didn't know. Before summer. Came in here, stayed a bit, then left, and took what didn't see. I was in my garden. Just heard the winch. This neighborhood's noisy with construction. You know? I thanked him with a liar's smile. In the car, I gripped the steering wheel like a pulse check. Tow truck, before summer. Months ago. My head turned into a whole shop floor of questions scattered on the ground. On Sunday, Ryan came by. He knew at once. What happened? Mom, your brother's neighbor mentioned a tow truck. When before summer, Ryan bit his lip, a boyhood habit. You think Ethan? I don't think Ryan. I feel, and it's worse. You want me to go with you? No. I swallowed the bitter word. I'll go alone. He squeezed my hand. Dad would say to go easy. Dad would say to trust. And look where that got me. Call Ethan and say you're going, he said. Don't ask. Say I nodded. Sometimes the younger son is the grown-up we're missing. I called. Ethan, I'm coming over tomorrow. I want to see the Mustang. Tomorrow's tough. I'll be there. 3 o'clock. Silence. Okay, he said, voice dim. I'll be here. I hung up and the house was so still. I heard the clock like a hammer on a workbench. I went to my empty garage, the one where Buddy used to dream. I ran my hand over the spot where oil used to drip. Dust stuck to my fingers like a memory that refuses to be forgotten. Paul, I whispered at the concrete rectangle, if there's something I need to see, show me. I'm not afraid anymore. A draft swept through the hallway, and for a second, the old scent of grease returned so sharp, so real. I closed my eyes and smiled. When I opened them, it was only the smell of a clean house, but it was enough. I had a sign, and I had an appointment. The next day, I arrived at 2:50. The house looked like a set waiting for the final scene. Perfect light, clear sky, barely a breeze. Ethan opened the gate wearing the face of someone heading to the dentist. You're early. Loves waiting, always shows up early. Ethan, he didn't answer. We walked in silence to the detached garage. Claire didn't appear. Maybe because secondary roles can't carry a confrontation scene. He took out the keys, breathed, and before you see this, Mom, open it. The key slid into the brand new cylinder, turned, clicked, turned again. A metallic rasp scraped through me. The door sighed and rolled up slow, revealing darkness like a stage curtain. Me, frozen. Ethan, pale. The air, heavy. Before my eyes adjusted to the dim, I knew. The body knows before the mind. There was no smell, no wide shadow, no car. Ethan dropped his head, like he was apologizing to the floor. Mom, I can explain. I didn't hear the rest. Because in the space where the Mustang should have been, there was only a clean emptiness. An emptiness insulting every promise. My heart, however, didn't empty. It filled with injustice, with revolt, with a love that once was and now had the sharp shape of betrayal. I stepped forward, firm, and laid my fingers on the cold concrete, as if touching a cold forehead. Where is the car? Ethan closed his eyes. The door, tired, finished rolling up. And everything was too clear. The air inside that garage felt denser than concrete. There was no sound, no smell, no dust on the floor, nothing. Just the absolute void where the last piece of my life with Paul had stood. Ethan stood beside me, motionless, hands in pockets, shoulders slumped. The posture of a man who knows there's no explanation to save what's been lost. Where's the car? My voice came out low, each syllable heavy as lead. Mom, listen to me. Where is the car? He swallowed, eyes avoiding mine. I needed to do something. I took a step closer. My heel clicked on the bare floor. Cruel. You sold it, didn't you? He took a breath, eyes filling. It was just to solve a situation. I was going to tell you. When were you going to tell me, Ethan? When the money ran out. When I forgot the car. When I died. He said nothing. Silence confessed enough. Why? I asked. I was in debt. The house loan, some extra costs, and what Dad always said, we had to move forward, not lives stuck in the past. Those words cut through me. Don't use your father to justify this. He ran a hand over his face, voice trembling. Mom, it was just a car. I swear, I was going to fix it, then buy another one, the same, if necessary, the same. My laugh came out dry and bitter. You think you can buy a copy of a story, of a love, of a dream that took half your father's life? He tried to come closer, but I stepped back. Don't touch me. The silence that followed wasn't from a normal fight. It was the kind that cuts, the one that comes when love breaks and the only sound left is conscience cracking. I didn't mean harm, he said. Then tell me, who did you sell it to? A collector? A guy who named Ethan? I don't remember right now. Name, Davidson. Peter Davidson. From Wilmington. I memorized it. How much, Mom? How much? 30,000. His words sounded like a muffled gunshot. $30,000. The same amount Paul refused 20 years ago when someone offered to buy the unfinished car. He's worth more than that, Paul had said then. One day, when he's finished. Now he was sold. Not finished. Not by choice. And without honor. And Ryan, I asked, does he know? I told him. And I split the money with him. The lie came fast and badly stitched. But it hurt anyway. You split it. Yes. Then why is he still driving that old car while you have a new SUV in the garage? His face came apart, and in that moment, before the confession, I knew the truth. The money didn't go to your brother, did it? Ethan stared at the floor, defeated. It went to the hospital. Hospital? Who got sick? His silence lasted half a second too long. It wasn't a hospital, it was surgery. Claire had a cosmetic procedure, and the bill was higher than we expected. For a second, I thought I'd misheard. You sold your father's car to pay for plastic surgery. The words came slow, like I was afraid of hearing them. Ethan tried to justify, but his voice was just noise. Mom, you don't understand. She was really down. It mattered to her, and what mattered to me. Ethan, what mattered to your father? I struck my chest, the dry sound echoing in the garage. You took the last piece of him from me. You sold the only thing that still made me get up every day and remember, we built something together. Anger, sadness, injustice, all of it mixed, bursting in a way I didn't think I could since the funeral. You didn't sell a car, Ethan. You sold your father's memory. He was crying now. But I wasn't. The tears had dried before they fell. The pain was so old it had turned to iron cold, rigid, sharp. I was going to fix it, Mom. I was going to make it right. There are things you don't fix. Ethan, you repair. I turned to leave, then paused at the door. You know the saddest part. What? I always thought you were your father's reflection, but now I see you're just the world's reflection. I walked out. The afternoon wind hit my face like a slap. On the way back to the car, my legs shook, but my mind was sharp. I knew what came next. The search, the confrontation, the repair. I might have lost the car, but I wasn't losing the legacy. On the road, Paul's voice was steady in my chest, like he was speaking from the passenger seat. Now, Maggie, now it's time to fight. And for the first time in years, I felt something other than pain. I felt purpose-filled anger, the kind that doesn't destroy, it builds justice. I didn't sleep that night, not a minute. The house seemed to breathe with me, restless, like every wall knew what had happened. The betrayal still hummed inside me, not as a scream, but as a constant buzz, impossible to ignore. I heard the rain outside and thought of how it sounded on the Mustang's hood, years ago. Almost a living memory. Cruel. Paul always said, truth is like rust. If you try to hide it, it just grows from within. That night, I understood. The rust had already eaten through the trust I had in Ethan. Now I needed to see how far it had spread. Morning came, and I got up with a mission: find the car. I didn't care about time, distance, or cost. I had to look into the eyes of whoever bought the last piece of Paul. I grabbed the old notebook I keep and wrote the name. Ethan let slip. Peter Davidson, Wilmington. Too common a name for such a dirty story, but it was a start. I started calling, first shops, then classic car dealers. Finally, classic car forums, those virtual places where middle-aged men spend hours discussing engines like their old loves. After 3 useless calls, someone finally said, more than never heard of him. Peter Davidson. I think so. If it's the same guy, he bought a Mustang about 3 months ago. Moss Green 67. It was in interesting shape. Said he was going to restore it. My heart raced. Do you know where he lives? No, but the Wilmington Auto Club should. He loves bragging about his acquisitions there. I wrote down the club's address, thanked him, and hung up. My hand shook so much I could barely write. I drove to Wilmington the next day. 3 hours of road, the radio off, my mind spinning in circles. Every mile was a memory, every curve, a flash of what I'd lost. When I arrived, the sun was slipping down, gilding the cars parked in front of the Wilmington Auto Club, and there it was like a punch to the gut, my Mustang. Even from a distance, I'd recognize that body anywhere. The same moss green, the same side crease, but now it gleamed, new, reborn. The world went quiet. Everything, the wind, street noise, even my own heartbeat stopped. The car was finished. And I wasn't. A gray-bearded man with a proud smile came up to me. Beautiful, isn't it? A classic. I was lucky to find this one. Quite a story behind it, from what I was told. Story, I asked, keeping my voice steady. Oh yes, the previous owner sold it cheap. Said the widow had to let it go, family matter. I almost felt sorry. The ground tilted. The widow, yes, that's what the young man said. Sad tale. He seemed emotional when he told it. And the young man's name, Ethan Turner. Said the car was his father's, mechanic, if I'm not mistaken. My blood went cold. Did you meet him personally? Yes, he came by with his wife. Pretty young woman, her nose looked recently done. I remember because she seemed uncomfortable with the bandage. My heart stopped. Anger rose like a sharp, precise blade. Claire's image at the dinner table, saying, "The garage saves our lives," burned in me. Mr. Davidson, I said, trying to breathe, that car wasn't his. It was my husband's. It was sold without my permission. He looked at me, confused, then concerned. What do you mean? He showed me documents, probably fake. He scratched his head, clearly shaken. Look, Mrs. Turner, I bought the car about 3 months ago. Paid cash. I had no idea. I believe you. And I did. His eyes weren't those of an accomplice. He was a man who'd just learned he helped commit an injustice. If it helps, he said, I still have a copy of the receipt and his contact. And the car is registered in my name now. That hurt like seeing someone sign over a headstone that was still yours, but it also gave me what I needed, a real lead. I took the paper with trembling hands. In the corner, in blue ink, Ethan Turner, and a date, 93 days prior. Almost the same timing as Claire's surgery. I closed my eyes, swallowing the knot in my throat. Mr. Davidson, I don't want a mess. I just want justice. This isn't just any asset, it was our family's project. How do you feel about helping me get it back? He stood quietly for a moment, looking at the car, the metallic shine, catching the sunset, beautiful, but empty. You know, he said, when I bought it, I felt something different, like the car had a soul. Now I know why. He looked at me, firm. I'm not a cruel man, Mrs. Turner. Let's do this the right way. I left with shaky legs and sweaty hands. In the lot, before getting into my car, I looked at the Mustang one more time. The green looked darker in the late light. For a second, I saw Paul's reflection in the glass, calm smile, steady eyes. You found it, Maggie, he seemed to say. Now, finish what we started. I closed my eyes and let the tears fall. They weren't tears of loss anymore. They were a promise that the car and what it stood for would come home, and this time, no one would take it from me. I drove back from Wilmington with the receipt folded in my pocket and both hands gripping the wheel like I could hold time in place. On the passenger seat, I left the auto club card and Peter Davidson's number. Not papers, evidence, a bridge between pain and justice. Before anything else, I called Ryan. Son, I found the car. You're kidding. Where? In Wilmington. A man named Peter Davidson. He bought it 93 days ago. Silence. Held breath. Ethan told me that he split the money with me. He said, low, like swallowing glass. He lied. And more. Claire was there, the day of the sale, still bandaged from surgery. Ryan took a while to answer. When he did, there was steel in his voice I'd never heard. Mom, let's end this now. I'm going to face your brother first. Are you coming? By your side. Always. We got to Ethan's at dusk. Clear sky outside. Inside me, a storm. Claire opened the door with a smile that vanished when she saw Ryan behind me. Is Ethan home? I asked. He's in the office. We didn't wait to be invited. We walked in. Ethan stood from his desk like he'd just seen a fire walk into the room. Mom, Ryan, what's hap? Shut up and listen. I set the receipt on the desk. The paper hit like a hammer on a workbench. He read the name, the date. He went pale. Sale, 1967 Ford Mustang, fastback buyer, Peter Davidson. Amount, $30,000. Date, 93 days ago. I read aloud. I can explain. You explained that you split the money with your brother. So how much did he get? He looked at Ryan and recoiled like shame pushed on his chest. Nothing, right? Ryan said, voice level. Nothing. The word echoed like a contained shot. Shame, humiliation, and right behind them, fury. Ryan, I was going to make it right. With what money? I cut in. What was left after Claire's plastic surgery? Claire, who'd blended with the wallpaper till then, hardened her face. That's an invasion of privacy, she hissed. No, I said. It's theft. She gave a toothless laugh. You're being dramatic, Maggie. It was an old car. It was a legacy. Claire, and you sold it like junk. Ethan ran a hand through his hair, eyes wet. I didn't mean to hurt anyone, Mom. You did it by neglect, and neglect is the discount arm of betrayal. I took out the club card and slid it across to him. I saw the Mustang. It's beautiful. Finished what you said you'd do one day, with your brother another man did, without stealing from his own mother. Silence split the room in two. And now? Ethan asked, childish, lost. Now, you repair, I said. You'll acknowledge in writing the debt you owe me and Ryan. You'll reimburse us in full and sign a promissory note. Mom, I don't have all that money. Then, you'll work and pay. In installments, with moral interest, and more. Tomorrow you're coming with me to Wilmington to ask Mr. Davidson to reverse the sale. I've already spoken to him. He's not a cruel man. Claire exploded. This is absurd. The car belongs to someone else now. Even so, I answered, there are people in this world who choose to fix what they can when they learn they took part in an injustice. She rolled her eyes, exhausted by humanity. Ethan, say something. I'll go, he whispered. I'll go with you. Ryan fixed his gaze on his brother. And you're going to apologize to Dad, out loud, even if it's at the hood of an empty car. Ethan closed his eyes, accepting the sentence. I went on, steady. One more thing. You're going to hand over everything you have related to the car papers, keys, anything, and you're giving me access to your detached garage. I want to see with my own eyes where you lied to me. Claire huffed, theatrical. This is getting out of hand. Maggie, things crossed the line when you chose a scalpel over a bond. We went to the garage. Ethan turned the key. The door rolled up, revealing only stacked boxes, a folding table, chairs, a speaker, no wheels, no tarp, no scent of history. I walked to the center of the concrete rectangle and stopped. Humiliation tried to rise in my throat, but I forged it into an order. Tomorrow, 9. My house. I'm driving. On the way out, Claire couldn't resist. And what are you going to put in there? An altar. Respect. Claire, something you can't buy with $30,000. We turned our backs. The door shut. And finally, courage took the place of pain. At home, I made coffee for me and Ryan. He pulled out his phone, turned it over in his hands, set it on the table. Mom, I need to tell you something. Ethan came to me 2 months ago, asked for secrecy, said he'd buy my silence with some of the money when he could. And you, I said no, and that if he didn't tell you, I would. He cried, promised, swore. I waited. You were afraid of breaking me a little more, son. I was afraid of killing what was left between you two. I squeezed his hand. You didn't break anything. He did. And now, together, we repair. My phone buzzed. Peter Davidson. Mr. Davidson. Mrs. Turner. I've been thinking. I want to help, but there's a problem. I looked at Ryan. He leaned in, alert. What problem? I can give the car back if you cover the restoration costs. I don't want profit. I just can't take a loss. How much? Parts, labor, paint. Over 40. Air left my lungs in a short exhale. I'll find a way. There's one more thing, he added, cautious. The Mustang isn't with me at the moment. I closed my eyes. What do you mean? I left it at my brother-in-law's shop for a final check, and this morning, someone tried to take it. Take it? I think the young man who sold it to me heard I spoke with you. Someone called, offering to buy it back for more, and the shop got a visit. My blood went cold, anger, sharpening like a scalpel. Payback, counterattack. Is the car safe? I asked. For now, locked, watched. But I don't trust it'll stay that way. Then I'll be there in the morning with my sons. We'll solve this face to face. Bring any papers you have. I'll bring mine. And, Mrs. Turner, yes, thank you for telling me the truth. I don't want to be part of this betrayal. I hung up. Ryan stood, fists tight. Is Ethan coming? He is, or I'll go without him. Man, bring the promissory note ready to sign. We sat in silence for a moment. I looked at my empty garage. I pictured the Mustang there again, shining, breathing, not as a memory, as reparation. Mom, Ryan said, voice low. Do you think Dad? He's listening and waiting for us to finish. My phone buzzed again. Ethan, I'll go tomorrow, but Claire doesn't want me to sign anything. Says we can solve it another way. I looked at Ryan. It's time to unscrew the lies. I replied, tomorrow, 9 a.m. Wilmington, with or without your courage. Sent. I closed my eyes. Paul smiled somewhere in my chest. Tomorrow wasn't just a date. It was the border between loss and justice. And I was already on the right side. The sun had barely risen when I got up. I hadn't slept, but I got dressed anyway. I put on Paul's heavy cotton jacket, the one stained with grease, and looked in the mirror. A tired face, steady eyes. For the first time in a long time, I saw courage there, not longing. Ryan's engine brought me to the door. He was on time, as promised. Behind him, Ethan's newer, colder car pulled up. Ethan got out, face drawn. Claire stayed in the passenger seat, arms crossed, already bored before the confrontation began. Shall we? I asked. Clipped. We shall, Ethan said. The drive to Wilmington was a living silence, full of unsaid sentences. Every mile was a nail hammered into the lid of whatever trust had once existed between us. But the path was drawn, and I was finally driving the road back to the truth. The Wilmington Auto Club sat on a wide street lined with warehouses. Peter Davidson was already at the entrance, calm, respectful, with the look of a man who understands he's standing in something bigger than a botched deal. Mrs. Turner, he said, shaking my hand. The car is here, safe, thank you, Mr. Davidson. He looked at my sons. I imagined this is the young man who sold it to me. Ethan lowered his eyes. Yes, sir, and this is your wife. It is. Davidson folded his arms. Steady. I want you to know, if I'd understood the full story, I never would have bought it. This car has a soul. You don't sell a soul without the consent of the people who made it. Claire rolled her eyes. Please, sir, let's not turn this into a drama. I'm sorry, ma'am, he replied. But the drama began when your husband lied to his own mother. We went into the shop together, and there it was, the Mustang, shining under the lights, as if time had gone backward. Moss green paint gleaming, interior restored, new tires. It was beautiful, perfect, and it hurt because I wasn't the one who finished what we started. I walked up slowly, laid my hand on the hood. The metal's cool touch raised goosebumps. I closed my eyes and breathed the scent, the same one Paul loved. For a moment, I heard his voice, whispering, "See, Maggie, he always had a soul. He just needed someone to believe." I opened my eyes and faced Ethan. "Look hard, son. This is what your father dreamed of. This is what he wanted you to finish, together. And you turned his dream into a surgery payment." He was crying again, but I wasn't. The pain wasn't tears anymore. It was controlled fire, Mom. I did everything wrong. Yes, you did. But a mistake only turns into a sin when we pretend it wasn't a mistake. I held out the receipt, the buyer's card, and an envelope with a document Ryan had drafted the night before. Sign it. Ethan took the paper, shaking. What is it? A promissory note, acknowledging you misappropriated a family asset and commit to paying the full amount plus restoration costs. You'll sign, and I'll file a notarized copy for each of us. When it's all paid, the car goes back in your name, and your father's name is clean again. Claire stepped forward. This is ridiculous. You can't. I can, and I will. Because justice isn't revenge. Claire, it's repair. Peter Davidson watched in silence, respect deepening. Ethan took a deep breath, looked at me, and with a trembling hand, signed. The scratch of the pen on paper was the most beautiful sound I'd heard in years. Now, I said, turning to Peter, let's talk about the car. As we agreed, he replied, I need the amount I invested, no profit. I just can't be out the cost. I took out a smaller envelope. Inside, the savings of my life, a check for the first part. It's everything I have now. I'll pay the rest in 3 months. Does that work? He looked at me for a few seconds, then nodded. Mrs. Turner, your husband would be proud. I accept, and I'll make sure the car goes back to your house exactly how it left mine, standing, with a soul. I wanted to hug him. All I could say was, thank you, for giving back dignity, along with the car. Outside, the wind smelled of rain. Ryan came up beside me, leaning on the car. He looks the same, Mom. He does, but he doesn't. Why? Because now, every piece carries the weight of truth. And nothing shines brighter than that. Ethan stood a few steps away, smaller, somehow guilt, shame, remorse, all mixed on his face. Mom, I don't know if you can forgive me. Forgiveness isn't forgetting, Ethan. It's looking at the wrong and saying, you're not going to define me. He nodded, tears falling again. I'll pay, all of it, and when it's done, I want to help finish what Dad started. I smiled, tired but real. Then start by helping bring the car home. Peter called over to Tex. In minutes, the Mustang was on a flatbed, not the one that took him months ago, but a new one, clean worthy. When the winch motor started, I closed my eyes. This time the sound wasn't loss, it was return. Claire hung back, face hard, body rigid, but in her eyes, I saw something no scalpel fixes, shame. Before I got into the car, I went up to her. You know, Claire, beauty that depends on what you destroy never lasts. She looked away, and I moved on. On the road back, the wind was strong. The flatbed rolled ahead, the Mustang covered but present. Paul always said, starting over is like restoring. It hurts at first, then it shines. Ryan drove, Ethan beside him. I sat in back, watching the road and feeling something I hadn't in a long time, peace. As we entered Asheville, the sky opened. The house appeared in the distance, old, simple, full of soul. And in the backyard, the empty space in the garage seemed to smile, ready to receive what always belonged there. Welcome home, buddy, I murmured when the truck stopped. Sunlight broke through the clouds, lighting the green under the cover. For a second, the wind lifted the tarp just enough for the left headlight to wink as if it recognized the way back. Paul would be proud, and I, finally, was whole. The flatbed pulled away, and for a moment the engine's noise was the prettiest music that ever echoed in that yard. When the truck left the Mustang on the ground, I looked at the car and felt something inside me rearranged, like every piece of my soul found its place again. The moss green paint gleamed in the Asheville sun, the same shine I used to see in Paul's eyes when he'd say, one day, Maggie, this car will bring us together. It took more than a decade, but he was right. There we were, me, Ryan, and Ethan gathered again, circling the Mustang like we were both laying something to rest and christening something new. He's beautiful, Mom, Ryan said, voice tight. He's alive, I answered. And now, we finish what your father started. Ethan stood quiet, looking at the car like a dirty mirror. Guilt still weighed on him, but there was something new in his eyes, regret, maybe shame, maybe a real desire to fix what he'd broken. Where do we start? He asked. I looked at him and smiled, just a little. Inside, always inside. The next days were work, grease, and silence. But not the silence of hurt. This was the silence of starting over, when words aren't needed yet. Ryan took the interior leather dash, upholstery. Ethan was in charge of electrical, didn't know much, but learned, and me. I took care of what no one sees. Polish scent, the space, the garage's soul. I put Paul's old radio back on the shelf, the same one that played Fleetwood Mac while he worked. When the first song came on, Landslide, my chest ached, but I let it play. It was time to let the past speak. One Sunday afternoon, Ethan came over, covered in grease. Mom, can I ask you something? Sure. Do you think Dad would forgive me? I paused, looked at him, tired face, wet eyes, hands marked. I think your father's forgiveness isn't something you need to earn. It's something you need to deserve. And to do that, you have to finish what he started. He nodded without a word. In that gesture, I saw a man being born. For weeks, we worked together. Time seemed to roll back. And for the first time in many years, the garage sounded alive again. Tools clinking, door groaning, laughter tucked between one memory and the next. Ethan and Ryan started to understand each other again. They argued, laughed, teased, but this time, with clean hearts, and I watched, feeling Paul there blended with the smell of oil and dust. One night, while I was putting the tools away, Ryan asked, "Mom, when the car's really done, what are you going to do?" I smiled, looking at the Mustang. "Drive, alone, down the road your father always wanted to take, and then hand over the keys to you two. Because a legacy isn't meant to be stored, it's meant to be lived." He nodded, smiling back, and I realized what was once loss was now a promise kept. When the engine finally fired, the true sound of life returning, I cried. Not a sad cry, a grateful one. The garage vibrated, the radio blared a little louder, and Ethan shouted like a kid, it caught, Mom." I closed my eyes and pictured Paul in the passenger seat, smiling, arm on the window, wind in his face. "Do you hear that, love?" I murmured. Our buddies breathing again. Later at dinner, the table felt different, light, laughter, silverware without tension. Claire didn't command for the first time. No one missed her. Ryan raised his glass. "To Dad, to the car, and to you, Mom," Ethan added softly, "and to the forgiveness that comes with the sound of an engine." We toasted. For a moment, everything was at peace. That night, after the boys went to bed, I went to the garage alone. The Mustang gleamed in the moonlight. I laid both hands on the hood and let the tears fall without shame, without fear. "Paul," we finished. The wind lifted the cover a little. The headlight flickered under the moon's reflection, and I knew he was there. In every bolt, in every laugh, in every pardon. I woke before the sun, not from anxiety, from reverence. Some things you don't do in a rush or shouting. You do them in silence, like walking into an empty church. The garage met me with that cool dawn air. The Mustang slept under the cover, and for a second I just stood there, listening to the house breathe. Paul used to say some silences are good. It's the sound of what can still happen. I pulled the cover back slowly. The moss green returned my face with a shine I hadn't seen in years. Soft light made little constellations in the paint. I ran my fingers over the badge, touched the left headlight tube again. "Old friend," and opened the door. New leather let out that scent that mixes present and past. I sat. The wheel fit my hands like it had always been waiting for them. I turned the key. The engine coughed once, twice, then woke with a full, rounded rumble. Not the arrogant roar of new cars, the deep voice of something that crossed time and rust, and still chose to stay. I closed my eyes. "You hear that, Paul?" The RPM needle rose, settled, obedient. I smiled and cried, both at once. The way real life is. Ryan appeared in the doorway. Hair a mess, t-shirt inside out. He smiled with his eyes before he smiled with his mouth. Ethan came right after, unsure, like asking permission inside his own story. "Ready, Mom?" Ryan asked. "Ready," I said, and for the first time in years, that word didn't hurt. Ethan held out something small in his palm. The white paint marker. The same one Paul once made me use to sign our initials under the hood paint. "Want to put it back," he said, unable to meet my eyes. I took the marker, breathed, and wrote where only we would know, P+M, always forward. I capped it, touched the metal, and felt a sweet warmth rise in my chest. I placed the marker in Ethan's hand. "Your turn," I said. "No lies," he wrote slowly. E+ are not his wife's name, his brother's. When he looked up, there was something new in his eyes, simplicity, maybe, or just truth. "I'll be back by lunchtime," I said. "I need to drive alone." Ryan nodded with that kind of respect you can't teach. Ethan stepped back, making way. I left the garage like crossing a portal. The road met me cold and empty. First gear slid in smooth. Second with a light click that sounded like a "you got this." The world woke in pale blue, pines along the shoulder like tall sentinels. I turned on the old radio static hiss, and as if choosing for me, an old song rose, "Ramble On," Led Zeppelin. I laughed to myself. Okay, universe, I get it. The first miles were about relearning the car's body, the wheel's weight, the clutch's timing. It wasn't a drive. It was a ritual. Every shift felt like getting back a piece of me I'd left in strange places. Funerals, waiting rooms, sharp-edged conversations. Here, things fit. The Mustang spoke to me in the language Paul taught me. Listen, feel, trust. When the road opened in a curve, I saw the lake, the same one from our old dream. I pulled into a turnout, cut the engine, and let the world get big. The air smelled like water and wet leaves. I got out, leaned against the car, and stared at the glassy surface. Silence came in waves. "I'm here, love," I said. Simple. It took a while, but I made it. I closed my eyes and let the memory arrive whole. Paul, laughing with the boys in his arms. Paul guiding my hands the first time in the driver's seat. Paul explaining cars have souls, as long as someone's willing to listen. I felt the weight of time, and right behind it, the lightness of having crossed it. Grief, I understood then, isn't a wall. It's an ocean. You don't go over it, you swim through, even when you're out of breath. On the other side, the pain doesn't disappear. It just learns to breathe with you. I opened the glove box and took out 2 letters. Mine, written in the first month, without him. Ryan's, short as a sob. I read them both out loud. Old words get a new body when they find the right place. I folded them carefully and returned them to the dock, like putting a piece back into the engine. I got in again, started the car, and this time let the engine sing. The rumble rolled across the lake and came back to me like a promise. First, second, third. The world picked up a different speed. Empty road, sky opening, the town still asleep behind the hills. I took the Mustang to 55, like testing my own heart, not out of bravado, out of respect. He answered smooth, faithful. That's it, I thought, with a smile I recognized in the mirror, the smile of a whole woman. On the way back, an old pickup pulled alongside for a few seconds. The driver, a white-bearded man in a faded cap, gave me a thumbs up and mouthed beautiful. I returned the gesture. He drove on, and I laughed. The world recognizes honest beauty. Turning onto our street, I saw the crooked trees, the mailbox Paul fixed 6 times, the perpetual garage sale signs that never sell. When I rounded the corner, Ryan and Ethan were on the sidewalk waiting. Ryan's face said relief. Ethan's said expectation and fear, neighbors that still hadn't learned to talk. I parked gently, let the engine rest. For a moment, no one spoke. The car still vibrated a little, like breathing. I opened the door and stepped out. Ethan took a step forward. "How was it?" "It was." I searched for the right word. "Just." He nodded, like that word was more than an answer, was instructions. Ryan hugged me. His hug smelled like the old days. I rested my head on his shoulder and breathed. Paul was there, in his own way. "Tonight," I said, holding both of them, "we celebrate. Cheap pizza, radio up, garage open. Your father's way." "And tomorrow?" Ethan asked, timid. "Tomorrow the plan starts," I said. "We'll make everything official. The agreement with Peter, the promissory note, the deadlines, and we'll set a commitment. The car stays here. The final restoration finishes here. And the 3 of us cross the finish line together. In 6 months, Buddy will have every detail your father dreamed of, and ours too." Ethan breathed like he'd been handed both a sentence and a relief. "I'm in," he said. "I need this." "You need it and you deserve it," I corrected. "But it's going to be work." Ryan laughed. "Light. We've got work. And grease." What we were missing was direction. I looked into the garage full of history again. In the corner, the old radio, leaning on the wall, the jack on the bench, the wrench with the worn handle, the same one I held the day I promised not to let Buddy die. I touched the tool, and it felt like it knew me. "Paul," I whispered, "just for the 2 of us. Today I gave you back the road. Tomorrow, I give you back the boys." The wind slipped into the garage, spreading a perfume of leaves, oil, and future. For a second, the car's cover lifted like a sail. Ryan smiled. Ethan too. I closed my eyes. Life doesn't go back to what it was. But sometimes when we insist, repair, ask forgiveness, and keep going, it becomes better than it would have been. I rested my forehead on the wheel and, softly, let the next chapter be born. Now we finish for real. And nobody sells what we love again. Outside, the sky opened wide. In here, the garage was a heart again. And if this story touched you, help Buried by Family keep bringing moments like this to life. Subscribe, share, and leave a comment, because here, every story is a heartbeat, and every heartbeat belongs to someone who had to start over.